to our Q3 call. Our CEO, Oliver Zipse, and our CFO, Walter Mertl, are also back in the room with me. The line will be open shortly for your questions. The operator will first give you some technical instruction. Please go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin our Q&A session. If you have a question, we ask that you please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Or if you have dialed in, please press *9 to enter the queue. Once your name has been announced, you can ask a question. If you want to withdraw your question, please lower your hand using the raise hand function in the Zoom app, or via telephone, press *9. Thank you, and a moment for the first question, please. The first question is from George Gallilee at Goldman Sachs. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for taking my questions. The first question I had was around the underlying profitability of the business. If we add back something in the region of 800 million euros for the IBS provisioning, it would imply an auto margin of around 5%. And I think if we also look at your full year guidance, it would seem to suggest a margin in the range of 5 to 7% for the fourth quarter. So is this the right way to think about the underlying level of profitability at BMW today, or are there still factors related to IBS that are suppressing the margin both in Q3 and Q4 on an underlying basis? The second question I had was with respect to your North American manufacturing footprint. Obviously, it's too early in terms of the election and what that might mean for trade and tariffs. But could you just give us some insight into the flexibility you have in the plant in Spartanburg? Can you increase the capacity there? What kind of shift structure are you operating? And would that plant also be capable, in theory, of producing large sedans in the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. We start with Walter and then Oliver. Walter, please.
Hello, George. Thank you for analyzing our high three-digit million warranty provision, which I didn't mention with these numbers, but quite close. But we shouldn't forget that more or less 2 weeks we lost on sales. That's the reason why sales is down in Q3, revenue is down, and automatically also profit. So there is the biggest impact in Q3, which we also stated in September. There is still an impact in Q4, so not everything is fully caught back, but still an impact there. And that's the reason why your math is absolutely right for the Q4. It must be something between 5 and 7% in the quarter to end up with 6 to 7% year-to-date 12, as we set our guidance. And we shouldn't forget also the mix implication in Q3, because most of the IBS cars have been on the upper premium segment. So that will turn back in Q4, also supporting it. But as I mentioned, in the quarter four, we still have some impact of IBS.
Thank you very much, Walter. And now we come to the second part of your question, manufacturing footprint in the US. Oliver, please.
Good morning, George. Let's look at three things. First of all, we are since 30 years in the United States with our own manufacturing facility, more than 50 years in the market as a key player there, very strong over more or less all segments with a very high manufacturing footprint. And that's my second point. We produce the most demanded vehicles in the United States. We produce there. The X3 is brand new, and we're very confident that this will be a good success in the United States as well. We also produce the X5, X6, X7, XM. It's all produced in the United States. So there's some natural cover up against possible tariffs or whatever. But let's not speculate whether there are tariffs. It might also only be that this is a verbal issue. Let's look at the results so far this year per October in the United States. We see a growing market for us. We sold more than 290,000 vehicles in the United States, and and that's a growth by almost 7,000 units. So it's a growing market. And if you look only in October, we gain even more momentum. We sold 36,750 cars, and that's a growth by more than 20% against the previous year, a plus of 7,300 cars. So the market is working really well for us. We seem to have the right product portfolio on the combustion engine side as well as on the electric side. So in the United States, I would think we almost have a perfect setup for the time to come.
Thank you very much, George. Next question, please.
The next question is from Tim Rokossa at Deutsche Bank. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Oliver and Walter. I would have two quick follow-ups to George's questions. I think what he was trying to get to with the first one is this underlying profitability level that we've now seen in Q3 pre the provisioning and that we are expecting for Q4 the right number to think about in an environment that we currently have in the world with weak China, EV transition, and so on and so forth? Or is there scope to improve that from the levels that we're seeing here? And the second follow-up to that is, Oliver, in your exposure in the US, obviously we can see two things here. We can see a further escalation of the US-China trade tensions, and we can see something, as you said, that may just be rhetorically from him right now on EU into US. How many vehicles are you importing into the US currently? How many are you exporting? If you could just update us on the number. And then my actual question is, the weakness of the sector that we're seeing right now is still China. It seems there's different perceptions of how this will play out. What's your game plan for China? Is this just a cyclic weakness that the auto industry is used to? We're seeing this in other markets before. We've been there in the US, we've been there in Europe. Or did something permanently break when it comes to demand for Western brands? What's your assessment? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. We start with Walter about Q3 and the game plan for China. Walter, please.
Hello, Tim. Well, as I tried to mention, the 5 to 7 math calculated number for Q4, that is rather the point. But going forward, our strategic target is still 8 to 10%. And of course, we can't do any predictions, which we will do in March, because we also, based on all what's going on also in the US, we have to see, and then we will give the right numbers accordingly. But our strategic numbers, which we are still aiming for, and we also mentioned that the ad hoc guidance is 8 to 10% EBIT margin for our business. And in China, as we mentioned previously, we are growing on the BEV side. We have 15% share of BEVs in the total market. And Mini just has launched. X3 is also going to claim back things because we are in the run out of the X3 in China. It's just the ordinary business. So we will seek momentum also going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Walter. And now, Oliver, to the exposure US vehicle export numbers.
Yeah. Let's first not speculate on the outcome of the election and its and the consequences. Our nationwide footprint in the United States currently consists of about 30 locations in 12 states. So it's not only Spartanburg. And of course, our largest BMW plant as a single entity sits in the United States. To your question, 65%, so 2/3 of our local US sales are produced in Spartanburg, mainly with the X models. And we are committed to investing further. As we stated before, we will electrify this plant as well, and we are investing there already as we speak with 1.7 billion euros. The business we have there directly and indirectly provides and supports more than 120,000 jobs. I think this is very important to local politicians and contributes overall $43 billion to the US economy. So what I mean with that, we have a strong footprint there, which kind of protects us against anything which might happen on the geopolitical side.
Thank you very much, Tim. Next question, please.
The next question is from Horst Schneider at Bank of America. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. Great.
Go ahead, Horst.
Yeah, thank you. First question that I have is because you have got by now, I mean, in the quarterly report, you don't show these numbers anymore. You show that just in the annual report. Could you maybe tell us what was the amount of warranty provisions that you had at the end of 9 months in the context of this recall? And when I think about that, the biggest lever by now for earnings for the future is to bring the warranty costs down. So could you give us maybe a feeling what measures you have taken in general to bring the costs down and how quick you expect these costs to come down? And what is the normal level of warranty provisions once you got all these issues under control? That would be very helpful. The number 2 question that I have is, we have got by now several auto companies are saying they need to cut costs. I think in Germany, every auto company is saying that. I think except you, but you had also increase of employees in Germany. I think in Europe in general, you still open a plant. Given now the situation that we have, that seems to be more difficult to push the sales through. Do you see the need to cut more costs, and by when can we expect maybe kind of program you want to announce? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Horst. Walter, please.
Hello, Horst. So the warranty provision compared with year-end 23 is more or less on the same level. Why is that? Yes, we have all new accruals on provisions, so additional warranty costs digested in the P&L. But on the other side, we also mentioned already that we pay off all these warranty provisions we had it for from last year. So yes, if you have a look for the principle on the warranty side, we have 3 major topics, which you're all aware of. We had the airbag some years ago, we had ETR, and currently we are running on the IBS. So that all gets repaired and paid out. And based on that, we keep the level of provisions currently year-to-date September. And these one-off effects, they rather last on the P&L side. Absolutely right.
Okay, thank you very much, Walter. Then we come to Oliver, please.
Efficiency is a cornerstone of our product strategy. There is a base ratio we put in all to our planning of 4%. And let's have a look at Europe. This is not a shrinking market for us. Again, if we look at months to dates figures, we sold in Europe 620,000 cars, which is a considerable chunk of our complete product portfolio, and it grew by almost 50%. That's more than 7% growth in Europe. So we're not shrinking here in Europe, you know. And let's have a look at the figures. Second of all, yes, we are opening a new plant. We opened the plant in Hungary with very, very competitive conditions, you know, and that will strengthen also on the cost side our competitiveness against plants we have here in Germany. So we need capacities to grow, and we do grow, as you see. And of course, the Hungary plant is a fully electric plant. And as we said before, we grow with the BEV over all segments currently. So the current situation does not change our plans at all.
Okay, maybe can you tell us what is the reversal of warranty provisions we maybe see that next year? Is it just the bookings you did know in Q3, or I think there should be more to come on top, right? Because as you say, you had basically 3 warranty cases.
Well, as I mentioned, we are working on the repair of all these warranty cases. That's the reason why we have such a big amount on the short period disclosed end of last year. And we're still working on those ones. Everyone is getting dealt with, and IBS, as we also announced, is through by 25.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Horst, thank you very much. Next question, please.
The next question is from Jose Azamende at JP Morgan. The first question is, in order to protect the profitability in China, do you plan to change your powertrain mix, more ICE, less BEV to protect margins in the region and any other measures you plan to take to protect the earnings and cash flow in the region? And the second question is, if global powertrain demand shift more towards BEV and mild hybrid, how is the powertrain portfolio of BMW ready to deal with this transition by 2030?
Okay, yeah. We start first part of the question with Walter and then Oliver.
So on the powertrain mix in China, we shouldn't forget that 85% of the volumes sold in China is produced in China. And this will become even more with the new Mini to start, full electric Mini produced in Changjiang. So that share will increase. And we will also, of course, have all these benefits in China cost-wise. So it's straight competitive. And maximum 15% is getting imported from outside China. So that is the reason why we still absolutely convinced about that we have a protection of our earnings and hence the free cash flow.
Oliver?
The strength of BMW lies in its flexibility regarding powertrains, and that is true in all regions of the world, but very specifically in China. Let's have a look at the figures. Until this month, we sold 38,000 cars in China, which were purely electric, which was a growth of almost 5,000 units. So the pure BEV side is growing in China for us. It's not shrinking. What is shrinking is the complete market, but the majority of cars we sell in China is still pure ICEs. So to have that flexibility to respond in the market with super efficient ICEs and at the same time take part in the growth of the BEV segment is, I think, our secret. Now, your question is looking toward 2030. We will locate the Neue Klasse also in China. So the battery electric only vehicle segment, we will participate with that new architecture, and it will be very competitive in that market. It has to do with the new user interface. It has to do with the latest battery technology with round cells, as we have said many times before, of the 6th generation. And it has to do with a very efficient architecture overall and with the newest level of digitalization and connectivity. So towards 2030, we are very happy with the flexible approach. And of course, on the plug-in hybrid side, we will have more or less in all segments a plug-in hybrid with BMW driving dynamics. And let's not forget the M division at the end of the day, which is very high regarded in China. And of course, that heritage of M is something competitors don't have. Also, the new players don't have that. And that gives some strength to BMW as well, if I look between now and 2030.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
The next question is from Stephen Reitman at Bernstein. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Stephen, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. Yes, good morning. Sorry.
Good morning.
Time to unmute. Thank you very much.
Okay.
A question about China, really, to get some granularity, really, on what's going on there as well, please. First of all, obviously, you've mentioned about your BEVs are well accepted there. Could you comment about the reception of the i5, which you priced at the same price as the 525 Li? And secondly, could you comment on the state of your dealers? Because obviously there's been some publicity about some high-profile closures, including a 5S dealership in Beijing, the Beijing Xindabao, I believe. So is it about their own financial problems, or is it triggered by specific issues with BMW? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Walter, please.
Hello, Stephen. Well, I think we are all aware on the pricing situation in China. It's different than in other regions. That's the reason why in China we have the price on the i5 equal to the ICE car. You will find that across our product range. The dealer support you're referring to, that was, of course, in a three-digit million euro position that we supported our dealers on profit as well as on liquidity in order to stabilize the situation. And that is coming straight to your next point, instead of Chinese dealers. Yep, a lot of them are currently in loss, but this is not just facing, they are not just facing performance issues. In some cases, it's also a financing issue. That means it's not just about profitability, but also liquidity. And indeed, GA, German Automotive, had an issue announced last week. And we, of course, care about all of our customers. They're always first priority. That means we are ensuring continuity with other dealers in their area so that we can still serve the customers with all the products they need.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Next question, please.
Question is from Philippe Houchois at Jefferies. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Philip, are you with us? We don't hear you. Okay, I think we come to another question.
The next question is from Michael Punset at DZ Bank. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Yes, Michael, good morning. I have one question with regard to your financial results. This was clearly negative in Q3. Could you explain the reasons for that? And is it fair to assume that the big bulk of that will reverse in Q4, take into account the current interest rate levels?
Good. Yes, we understand. Thank you very much. The answer will come from Walter, please.
Hello, Michael. The key reason is the evaluation of the fair value derivative side, the standalone derivatives. And that is a major impact in September, end of September especially. We had decreasing interest ratios, and that had an impact on our portfolio. Plus, some of the interest derivatives running out got matured in Q3, and that is this impact. And reversal in Q4, as you are fully aware of, evaluation of these derivatives, interest increasing means we will have additions and positive effects. Increase still going down, we would have a negative effect. Mainly, this is in our other entity segment, because this is the funding side for financial services, and they have a hedging strategy to fit with the interest derivatives.
Thank you very much, Walter, and also Michael. So we are coming to our last question.
Final question is from Henning Cosman at Barclays. Please unmute yourself and begin with your question.
Yeah, good morning. Taking the question. I had one on capital returns, please. Walter, you talked about the authorization for another 10 at over a 5-year time frame. Classification of your net automotive liquidity, you suggested that you would be paying out a very high percentage of your free cash flow. But it seems like if we're spreading a 10% for 5 years and add that to the dividend, that doesn't quite add up, or not remotely, midterm target of around 7 billion free cash flow. So I just wanted to understand the logic there. Is it possible to accelerate that to accommodate a higher payout ratio of free cash flow? Anything changed since we had this meeting with you about this? That's the first question, please. Is the benefit from tariffs. I just wanted to understand your logic there. I believe on the media call you suggested even be a net beneficiary of the tariffs. I just wanted to understand how you think about that. Did you mean relative to Mercedes and Porsche, or how did you think about that? And final one, housekeeping one, could kindly break out the volume price mix by item. I think you usually do that, so it would be great to get that color. Thank you very much.
Okay, we start with Walter and then Oliver.
Hello, Henning. Well, from a legal point of view, we always apply for 10% related to 5 years. That is our legal frame. And so we did in 2022, when we also requested 10% share buybacks for 5 years. That would have concluded in 27. As I just mentioned, our second program will be concluded by end of April 25. And then we would still have 1 billion left. So it will conclude anywhere earlier than 27. That's the reason why we propose, I have to say, we propose, it's an AGM decision ultimately, we propose to have a further 10% and based on legal question again for 5 years. And whether we accelerate or not depends, of course, on free cash flow. As we always said, free cash flow of automobile is then paid out via dividend, 30 to 40% of our profit, and optional by our share buybacks. So that is still the case. And I just refer to our AGM proposal, which is based on legal things.
Thanks, Walter. Oliver?
Well, if you are a local producer with a local footprint, you are, of course, benefiting in case there's something changing on the tariff side. And I think that was meant in the last call, that we benefit from these tariffs. And that is true in China, where we produce 85% of the local sales volume, and specifically also in the United States, where we have more than 2/3 of our production volume is sold in the United States. And that's a kind of a natural protection you have there.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached the end of the telephone conference. Now breakdown of volume, price mix. Sorry, I'm coming back, Walter. It's the last question for you. Breakdown of volume, price mix per item for Q3. Sorry.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my speech, it is all coming down. Volume, of course, heavily impacted because of IBS, which also led to elevated inventory side. That is a key element. Mix is also down because IBS is heavily impacting our upper premium segment cars, meaning MKL, GKL. So this is really weighting, and the pricing side is a high three-digit negative quarter-over-quarter, Q3 23 versus quarter 3 this year. And that is rather based on the pressures weight our results.
Good. Thank you very much, Walter. Thank you very much, Oliver. So we have reached the end of the telephone conference. Thank you for joining us. All the best to you, and bye-bye and servus from Munich.
Back to our second part of our conference. We're going to continue in German now after the short break. We're looking forward to your questions. First of all, there are some technical instructions before we're going to get started with the first question. So now let's hear the technical instructions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with a Q&A session now. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. And if you have signed in, please press star and 9. And then one after another, you will have the opportunity to ask your question. As soon as you have given us your name, or as soon as you hear your name, you can ask your question. To withdraw your question, please lower your hand. And when you're using a telephone, press asterisk and 9. Now we're going to have the first question. The first question is by Mr. Henning Hinze from the Manager magazine. Please switch on your mic. Good morning. I have 2 questions. They're both addressed to Mr. Mertl. You said earlier that you're supporting the Chinese dealers in 2 ways. However, I have not understood clearly to what extent of your support you're talking about. Can you please elaborate on that so that I understand it better this time? And then secondly, you said that you have made good progress in exchanging the brake components, and I would like to know in how many cars the brakes will have to be exchanged and an exchange of hardware, so to speak. So what percentage of all cars which are going to be delivered? So in what percentage of cars do the brakes need to be exchanged? Thank you, Mr. Hinze. I understood both questions. Walter, it's your turn. Good morning, Mr. Hinze. About the question about China. So far in the first quarter, there was no support for the dealers. After long discussions in the third quarter, we agreed on supportive measures, and these supportive measures consist of two parts. In one way, we want to increase the profitability of the dealers by giving them a discount, and then we also want to support their liquidity. That also decreased our free cash flow in Q3. And then we also paid out some bonus payments, but that was a one-off. And we also support them with our financial services as far as their liquidity goes. And about the brake situation, in the worst case, we would be talking about 1.2 million vehicles, as we have mentioned in September. 1.5 million cars have been affected. 1.2 million had already been delivered. And so in some markets, we need to replace the brakes for all of the cars out there. And in other areas of the world, according to what our software says. And that's why we have made some money available for that. Mr. Walter Hinze, thank you. Next question, please. The next question is by Markus Fasse from Handelsblatt. Please switch on your mic. Good morning, gentlemen. I've got two questions about China and the USA. First of all, about China once again. You said you saw a decrease in demand of 30%. You're not the only ones, but 30% is a lot. Can you elaborate where you have been affected, in which segments, and what your countermeasures are? And then I have seen that also there was a write-off with connected with BBA. Can you also explain more on that? Why there were some changes here? And then I also have a question about the US elections. Well, we don't know what the effects will be exactly, but they will be significant. But can you tell us why this market is so important for BMW? What do you expect in the years to come, independent of who's going to be the president, as far as drivetrains go, growth goes, and potential investment of BMW goes? On what all of that depends, and also what your experience has been with Republican administrations. Thank you, Mr. Fasse. We have received your questions. Let's get started with the United States in general. A first general statement about the election. As you said, Mr. Fasse, there's no clear final result yet. We will have to wait and see. And in the past, we did not comment on the election results, and it is not our task to do it this time either. But the BMW Group has been for almost 50 years a responsible company in the United States. And during all that time, with all the governments, whether they were Democratic or Republican, we have always been cooperating very well. So this is my statement so far about the election. And then about the sales in China, I will pass on to Mr. Mertel and to Mr. Zipse later. Walter Mertel. Good morning, Mr. Fasse. About the sales in China in Q3, there were some impacts into Q3. We had a decrease of 4.5% in the first 6 months, and of the 30%, is it's mostly due to IBS. We don't know whether the car which we were not able to sell could have been sold. We cannot identify that, but half of it is true to IBS. And about the write-offs of BBA, when we bought the additional shares of 25%, we had purchase price allocations. That's a regular write-off since the year 22, 1.3 to 1.4 billion per year. And then since we have this purchase price allocation in renminbi, so all of this is as planned, the regular write-off until the year 28. So there will be a write-off of 300 to 400 million in every quarter as of now. And then we have the last question about the United States in general, why this market is so important for us. And I would like to ask Mr. Zipse to answer that. Mr. Fasse, good morning. Well, the US market traditionally is of very great importance, and it hasn't changed. If you look at the products which are being manufactured in the US, how well they fit the market, whether the X5, X6, X7, but also the X3, which where we just started production. And our customers very much like these cars in the United States, but also in the rest of the world. And when we look at the month of October, and you will see that we have said the fourth quarter will not look as bad for us. And let me just mention some figures from October in the US. We have almost sold 37,000 vehicles. These are over 7,000 vehicles more than last year. So things are going very well over there. And that makes us also confident that some other burden here or there with the brakes, that we will be able to overcome this problem relatively quickly. So the United States, just like Europe and China, they all remain very important for us. And at BMW, we have developed the capability to offer or to play a role in the market in all these three big world markets. And nothing is changing when there's a new government. Because when there are changes in geopolitics, then it is important that you are locally present, and we are there. Thank you, Mr. Fasse. And let's hear the next question. The next question is by Christina Amann by Thomson Reuters. Good morning. I hope I switched on my mic. Yes, we can hear you. Great. I've got a question about the prices in China. When we look at the sales decrease, Mr. Mertel, you said the largest part was due to the IBS situation, but it's still a significant decrease. Can you tell us something about the pricing in China and give us an outlook when will things recover? And then also maybe if you could tell us also something about your expectations for next year, what the forecast will be for BMW for next year. And then also when it comes to political changes in the US, when electric cars are not as sought after anymore, and when you have your largest investment project in that area. Well, Ms. Amann, thank you so much. Mr. Mertel is going to start. Good morning, Ms. Amann. In China, over the past months, the transaction prices, which are under the responsibility of the dealers, they have changed differently. In June, they went down, and then they stabilized in the months after, and then sometimes they also went up by 2-3 points. And then in September, they went up to the level of June again. So there's some fluctuation. and there is a stimulus in different provinces which the dealers are using, and this is how it will continue. And during that time, we're supporting our dealers in profitability as well as in liquidity, as I said earlier. And in October, the October figures are on the level of June. So things are stabilizing and we're seeing a growth again. And now I would like to ask Mr. Zipse that we don't do a forecast for 2025 yet, and about the future of BAFs and the global situation in the USA. Well, good morning. We don't do any forecasts for 2025 yet, but let me give you some background information. First of all, we've got the X3 at BMW. That was traditionally a very strong product, and it is a new product, and we're quite confident because it is a big technological leap. Even though it's an ICE, you should never underestimate this vehicle, and especially when there will be a change in growth rates in the BEVs, that will help this product. So that's a big tailwind for us. And then also the Mini has all the vehicles next year, all the vehicles which we have announced, whether it's the Aceman, the Country, the Cooper as a combustion engine, or fully electric. So that all of that will give us some tailwind. So on the product side, and as you know, at BMW, it's always about products. We are, apart from the Neue Klasse, we're quite confident that things will stabilize for us. You can see that that I'm trying to instill some confidence. As far as the US market goes, let me mention a figure from the month of October because it's very up-to-date information. We have sold 3,500 BEVs in 1 month. That means more than 10% more than last year. So we need to look very closely at what is really happening and general trends. It's always difficult to generalize them. And also in Germany, there is less demand, even less demand than in other regions. And there's no big debate whether the Neue Klasse will be launched at the right time. It is actually the absolutely right time because the worldwide markets are growing. There are some shifts between the regions. There are regions with a slower growth. And of course, there are also shifts between manufacturers. And as we have heard earlier, we're doing quite well. We're well positioned. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Amann. Next question, please. The next question is by Wilfried Eckeldorner, who's working for Bloomberg News. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Zipse and Mr. Mertel, I have a very short question, which it was answered. It was asked before, but it wasn't properly answered. I wanted to know about the situation in China. What is your forecast for the sales, not just electric vehicles, but for the market as a whole for the remainder of this year? And when do you expect that there will be a recovery of the market there? That's all. Thank you, Mr. Eckeldorner. Mr. Mertel will answer that. About the overall market, we believe the overall market is has about a 1% increase compared to last year. And when we look at BMW, we can stress that we have now our X3. The Mini is going to be fully available. The X3 is being launched, and our 5 Series is doing better every month. And therefore, we can see at the end of the year, see a different figure compared to the third quarter. And also in China, the IBS problem is solved piece by piece. and we're getting better every month. And we see that in our sales figures, and we will hopefully be able to report like that in the end as well. Next question, please. The next question is by Daniel Zwick am Sonntag. Good morning. I've got a question about tariffs. Mr. Zipse, you mentioned protectionism before, and now the EU has introduced these penalty tariffs on Chinese electric cars. What does that mean for you? Is the iX3 going to be produced in Europe from now on? And also, when we look in the other direction, Trump declared himself the winner now and has also already received congratulations from other heads of state and government. So it seems to be pretty clear. And he has also announced tariffs or threatened with tariffs on the import of cars from Europe. So what would that mean for you? Would you have to invest more in the US even? Thank you. Mr. Zipse, please. Well, Mr. Zwick, we expected your question. Of course, the tariffs have been adopted, but negotiations are ongoing. At the moment, we could say that both sides have strengthened their negotiation position. We are involved in this whole process. I'm on the phone with parties concerned, and our statement remains that these tariffs will see no winner. Whenever you have bilateral relations which are being jeopardized, and we believe that when new import tariffs are being introduced, the EU Commission will have a detrimental impact on free trade, and it might lead to a trade conflict. The European Commission is aware. They know that if they adhere to their decision, it will be a bad decision, and they know that themselves. So I remain hopeful, and the iX3 is no longer an import product. We're mostly affected when it comes to the Mini Cooper electric and the Mini Aceman electric. That is the main topic, and what the price design will be, what it could be, that will remain to be seen. It has a negative effect on the market, and it affects negatively those customers who want to buy electric cars here. So let me say that it's actually they're shooting themselves in their own leg, if I may put it this way. So much about that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zwick. Next question, please. Next question is by Stephen Wilmer from the Wall Street Journal. Stephen, are you there?
I have two questions. One is, in the event of higher tariffs on vehicle shipments to the US, will you make adjustments to your production plans? And secondly, I want to ask what the market share trend is in China. What was your market share in the third quarter, and how did that compare to the same quarter last year? Thank you.
I think we should not speculate whether tariffs are going to be introduced or not, because there's a lot of negotiation tactics in play here. We should not believe that new tariffs will definitely come, but even if the main volume which we're selling in the US is being produced in the US, so whether it's the X3, X4, X5, X6, X7, they're all being manufactured in the US, and they make up the largest part of our volume. And if we see higher volumes because of this situation, then we're well prepared for that. Thank you. Second part of the question was about China. Well, currently in China, we have 3.3% market share with BMW and Mini. So as of September, we lost half a percentage point. And in the quarter, we lost 1%, and that is mainly due to IBS. So in the fourth quarter, you will see a recovery. We will regain market share as soon as we're selling more vehicles in the fourth quarter again. Thank you so much. Next question, please. Next question will be by Michael Gerster, Automobilwoche. Good morning. Can you all hear me? Yes, we can. I also have a question about China and about the long-term trend. When it comes to combustion engines, the market is decreasing. When it comes to electric vehicles, the German manufacturers don't play a major role. And had the CFO of Porsche, Lutz Meschke, said that there's a structural change in demand. So they're expecting that the Chinese market will not recover in the long term. We all have the same problems here. And the question is whether you are also prepared for such a scenario, so that you're saying so that China is not going to recover or get back to the figures we have seen previously, and whether you have thought whether you can also move into other markets, and which other markets could exist. Are there any new markets which you could tap into? And another short question about the fuel cell vehicles which you have planned. Here my question is, what are the main markets you have in mind there? And then also, what figures you're expecting per year for these fuel cell vehicles? Thank you, Mr. Gerster. I will pass this question on to Mr. Zipse. Mr. Gerster, good morning. Well, let's take a look at the figures, first of all, because not every competitor is the same. Year to date in China, when it comes to pure BEVs, we have 83,011 units, including October. That is a growth, almost 5,000 units more compared to last year. So we're not shrinking. And we have over 80,000 units. So we do play a role. Of course, we have a low market share, only between 3 and 4%. And that is also the case here. The fact that this does not correspond to our growth ambitions, that is true. We have reduced them, but we're still growing, and we do play a role. And we want to expand that with a Neue Klasse, a completely new technology cluster, which will elevate BMW to a new level. And then secondly, it is important to recognize that the market in China is growing. The market is not shrinking. The question is, who are the competitors? The capacities and market ambitions will be adjusted. They're not as high as last year, but a scenario where we don't play a role anymore, that is absolutely not true. It is a huge market for us, and it's working quite well. Of course, there's a price pressure in the lower price segments, especially in these lower price segments, there's price pressure because of the Chinese manufacturers, and we're adjusting our prices. We are doing that with a Mini, which is produced locally. We are there for this reason, so that we can remain competitive. To sum up, the growth has slowed. We're adjusting our capacities, but it is still at a very high level. And one more thing I would like to add. the strategy of China, the electric vehicle strategy, has different pillars. There are the pure electric vehicles. It's going very well. A lot of investments have been made, and that is working. And the second part is long-range plug-in hybrids in all shapes and sizes. And we're also a part of that. And the third pillar is hydrogen. A lot of people are overlooking that. China is the only nation, they're saying we have 3 pillars and they all have their limits. And that's why China is playing a role there as well. And we look, I was just in the Middle East where we're also making major investments in order to offer hydrogen on the supply side. And in 2028, we will introduce a vehicle, and then there will be demand for hydrogen. And we believe no matter where we're going to produce the vehicles, we believe that hydrogen will be the third pillar. In Germany, you don't notice that as much, but abroad you can see that that is going to be an important market growth segment in the next decade. Thank you, Mr. Zipse. Next question, please. The next question is by Gabriel Wirth from BR. Can you hear me? Yeah, we can hear you. Great. I have a question for Mr. Zipse. Did I understand you correctly? Unlike the competitors, you want to adhere to the CO2 targets for within the EU. Yes. Yeah, that was the answer of Mr. Oliver Zipse, the CEO of BMW. Yeah, please, can you elaborate on that? Can you, Mr. Witt, I think the answer, yes, is 100% clear, but I can comment on that. I just wanted to make it clear so that everybody understands it. I need that for the BR radio in German. I need a clear answer for the radio. Okay, let me try that once again. Yes, we adhere to that, and let me tell you why. Because for over 5 years, these goals have been set. They didn't develop overnight, and people were able to adjust their product portfolio. And the European market, in the European market, nothing happens overnight. Things take a long time to develop, and our BEV market is growing. We have the plug-in hybrids, and we also have improved ICE engine cars. Also, the ICE vehicles have been improved as far as their fuel consumption goes with the 85-volt network, and we're also thinking in different scenarios. Of course, the market can look different, but in all the different scenarios, it shows us that our product portfolio will meet its targets, and therefore we believe we are preparing ourselves. We don't want an adjustment in 2025, but we want to. What we want to see is a review in 2025 for the years after, as of 2030 onward, where we will. Next year, we're only talking about a decrease of the fuel consumption of 15%. But in 2030, we're talking about minus 55%. And that is going to be an enormous step in 1 year. And we're not talking about 2035 when we're talking about minus 100%. So we will be able to achieve that, but we're still open for review whether these short time segments actually make sense and whether it's feasible or not. So does that answer your question, Mr. Witt? Yes. And next question, please. Next question is by Regina in Clear Mediengruppe Bayern, Passau Neue Presse. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. I would like to know about the employment figures, especially when it comes to Germany. We have seen negative headlines in Germany. What are the plans for BMW for their employees? And you said, Mr. Zipse, before about the growing sales figures in Europe. What are the figures like for Germany? You talked about other European countries. You didn't talk about Germany. And a short question also about the hydrogen vehicles. Will they be produced exclusively in the US, or will they also be produced in Europe? Thank you. So let's get started with the development of our employee figures. Well, it is well known that unlike other companies, we have still employed new employees. We had a growth in our guidance. We're taking on people for all new skills which we need, and especially when it comes to all things digital, also for the new technologies. And we have these people on board now, and that means, without giving out a guidance for next year already, but since we already have everybody on board, so we will continue in that vein. Thank you so much. Mr. Zipse, please. You asked about the sales figures in Germany. Well, the current figures, including October, let me just read that out. Per month in Germany, we have sold more than 184,000 vehicles, 6,400 more than last year, about 3% more. And in the month of October, 19,000, that's almost 2,300 more, over a 10% growth in October. So things are positive. And we're also seeing the same picture for the BAFs here. As of October, we sold about 29,500 year up to date. This is also more than in the previous year. So the overall market is growing for us as well as the BEV market in Germany. So we don't agree that everything is really, that the outlook is bleak. On the contrary, our product portfolio helps us to strengthen our market share. And about the production sites for hydrogen, we will announce that whenever we are ready. But of course, we're continuing our cooperation with Toyota here as well. And our last question now is by Automotive News Europe, Mr. Nick Gibbs.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I had a question about the targets. You're on track to, as you said, hit the 2025 targets, but to want to review CO2 targets for 2030. Which models do you think will be hardest to switch from to BEV from ICE? Which segments, or do you imagine keeping a nice vehicle in each segment? And my second, I suppose the second question again was about tariffs on. I mean, if Trump has said the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, what could be the impact of those? Would you consider pushing more of maybe some of your sedan models into America for production there?
Thank you, Nick. We will answer in German. We will first hear from Mr. Zipse. When you look at our product portfolio, in all segments, we have electric vehicles. When it comes to the Mini, we have 3 cars which we have switched to electric, apart from the ICEs. And then we have the X1, the X2, the i4, we have the iX and the 7 Series in electric, and also the 5 Series. Next year, we will have the Neue Klasse. So the question, which is the most difficult to change? Well, we're following the markets. In all segments, there's a demand for electric vehicles, but not exclusively. So the question is not where is it the hardest to switch? The question is rather, what is our overall product portfolio? And apart from our flexible approaches, we also are going to introduce the Neue Klasse, which is a new electric architecture. And why? Because the markets are large enough, so we can afford to do so. And in each and every segment, we will also offer highly efficient 48-volt ICEs. So there's no end date for that. And about the tariffs in the United States, we talked about that earlier. We rather have an advantage because we have a big footprint in the United States for the United States and with the right vehicles. So we shouldn't be too nervous about that, of what could potentially happen. It might actually offer us a benefit, but it is much too early to discuss these tariffs now. I think that concludes today's conference. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your participation. I conclude now this conference, and all the best.